Welcome to FiST Chat, your source for news and discussions in film science and technology, hosted by Steve Kern and Ben Warner. Visit our website at fistchat.com. Hi there everyone, and welcome to FiST Chat, your daily, or should I say weekly dose of film science and technology topics. My name's Ben Warner, and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve? Back after 3 weeks?
Back after 3 weeks. Hi Ben, hi FiST Chat fans. It is good to be back.
Absolutely. Now we've got a bit to get through today, but we've been talking about film in the last couple of weeks, and now we're going to continue on that topic, but go at it from a different direction, and that's this idea of how you support yourself while you're getting your film career up and running, or whether you should really even be looking at it in terms of that, whether it's just a continual thing that just keeps going on and on ad infinitum. You know, it's just a question of how you keep your life going while you get this thing that you love doing off the ground.
Is it called benefits?
Yeah, exactly. The interesting thing, like I guess like any sort of art sort of industry, unless you're really, really successful and have established yourself, it's very hard to get a consistent income out of working in film or any sort of art business. We'll concentrate on film, of course, here, unless, of course, you're working for a company specific to the film industry. So if you're an effects editor or someone like that. But if most people, when they go into the film industry, a lot of them would have dreams of directing films and things like that as their sort of career goal, and not everyone can get there. But if the idea of getting a very well-paid income out of directing is, especially say in a country like Australia, is you're probably not on good ground there to get a really good income out of it, unless you're right at the top.
I'm not sure what the stats are, but it's certainly a few years ago they did a survey in Australia, and I think on average an Australian director directs a film once every 10 years. So you'd be wanting to get a big fee.
Yeah, if you get paid 10 million, I guess, per film, then that should cover you. But in most cases, in Australian film, that's not the case.
No, I think most budgets are between 3 and 5. And I think another thing, a friend who still directs said to me that really, if you break it down with the peaks and troughs of a career, it's cool to be a director in your 30s, but by the time you get to your 40s, you're averaging about $30,000 or $40,000 a year.
Yeah, exactly, and that's not much money for the amount of effort and struggle you have to go through to do that job,
and amount of passion you put in as well. So
exactly,
certainly worth thinking about.
So if there's not enough income coming from the actual job itself, then obviously it segues and follows that you have to have some sort of supplementary income coming in, and for most people that's the day job, and I guess that's where the don't quit your day job type of scenario comes in, because you need your day job to supplement your career ambitions in that respect. And the interesting thing I find, and I'd love to hear what you think about this, Steve, is this idea that, you have to struggle for your art. The idea that, apart from, actually struggling while you're doing the art, the idea that you also have to struggle in your life, because it puts you at a point where you're desperate enough to, chase after what you need. It'll give you that motivation to chase it. And I don't know if that's really that valid. For me, I still feel like I've got the motivation to go out and do it, even though I've got a day job that I go to every week. And these other people who struggle for their art, so to speak, will then question, well, are you really serious about going after this if you've got a day job? Because we're not sure that you are. And I think that's a load of crap, to be honest. But I'd love to hear what you think about that too.
I think, really, for a small few, and usually those that go on to reach, the pinnacle of any career, it probably does hold true. If you have a day job, it's a distraction, but then you're not going to be distracted by a day job because you're not interested in a day job, and ultimately you do very, very well because you're so focused. So yes, the struggle for your art and all that sort of thing certainly holds true, but by the same token, they're a very small percentage of people, and there's plenty of people who end up living on park benches probably because they wanted to become filmmakers.
Well, that's what I mean. If you happen to be in the right place at the right time with your indie film that you bankrolled off your credit card, and you're in your early 20s, and you just happen to be in the right spot to get it noticed and it gets sold, and then your career path goes off, that's fine. I'm sort of semi-quoting the Christopher Nolan way to success, because that's roughly what he did. But for every one of those guys that are out there, there's probably a million others that do exactly the same thing. You don't ever hear about them, and they don't go anywhere.
Well, and that's true. And then by the same token, there's also probably quite a large number of people who, kept their day jobs and worked on projects on the side and got there in the end anyway.
Well, from the acting point of view, the Harrison Ford one's probably a good example with his carpentry that he was doing.
Yeah, and there are a lot of actors and directors who have worked day jobs and then eventually made the leap. And it is the thing that, even if you are brilliant, even if you do make it to the top, the truth is that if you really dig into any story, there is no overnight success. So, whether it takes you 10 years while you hold down a day job to get where you're going, or whether, you are living on benefits and eating cornflakes for every meal, on the way to the top as well, it will take time. Very, very few people, unless they've got a lot of money, get helicoptered to the end.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's also a lifestyle choice. I mean, at the end of the day, making films is something that we enjoy doing, but is it your entire life in that respect? I mean, a lot of filmmakers would probably say that it has to be your entire life, otherwise you won't be able to put up with the crap that you need to put up with to do it. But I'm just wondering, do you really need to sacrifice a lifestyle for it? Because at the end of the day, you only live once, and if you're living on breadcrumbs for 30 years trying to get your film directing ambitions up and running, that seems a little ridiculous to me.
Well, it doesn't, but a lot of filmmakers, drink a lot of cappuccino, and having a job will get in the road of that, because you have to hang around. You have to hang around in cafes. You have to wear black and look moody and carry around a notebook to write down all the fantastic things that you see. And just having a job just would interfere with that. So I completely understand that. And to a certain extent, a lifestyle like that, maybe you don't need that much to fund it, and maybe the dreams and being a filmmaker, you have very powerful imagination usually, so maybe just dreaming about success is sometimes enough just to keep them going.
While they're eating corn chips on the park bench somewhere.
That's right.
It is a very interesting thing. I heard it a lot especially during my 20s. I think mostly. I think especially during your 20s, I think it's more likely you can indulge in that kind of thinking. I mean, you could do it, in your 30s, 40s or whatever, but it starts to become a little bit more ridiculous, because there's a question of, can you actually get your life together and present yourself responsibly to society, or are you just sort of mooching off of others while you're still trying to get your dream on board instead of trying to pay for it yourself?
Certainly with the way society is structured today, that, you need to get your success very early on.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if you don't, suddenly, you get to 30 and you haven't made a film, that's a bit of trouble. But I guess the other thing is just people's perception. So I feel for a lot of the genuine filmmakers out there who pursue it because they love the art, they love the craft, and they're doing it for love, not for money, and not even, some idealistic vision of success. They do it just because it's what they do. They are true artists.
Yeah.
But, in society's eyes, if, very often that you can be the best filmmaker ever, you can have made great critically acclaimed films or documentaries and, really not have had any financial success and maybe not even had, huge audiences view your work, and people take that as not being quite valid, or your art hasn't been validated. And I think that's very sad, because there certainly are a lot of filmmakers who are completely dedicated and work at it for that reason, and then to be rejected because they haven't had commercial success, or not to be acknowledged because they haven't had commercial success, is a bit cruel.
Yeah.
It's very cruel, in fact.
Exactly. exactly. And I guess just finally, and this ties into what we've been talking about in the last couple of weeks, is that the pervasiveness of technology today really does give you a certain amount of freedom to do it whenever you want, very quickly and very inexpensively. So in that respect, having a day job during the week and shooting on the weekends isn't such a hard prospect to fathom. Even though it wasn't 10 years ago, but it's even more so, I think, today. It's quite simple to be able to go out and do a lot of these things now. So it's not beyond the reach of anyone, even if they are distracted by other means.
That's absolutely true.
Alrighty. So we might draw a line under that there, and I guess anyone can tweet us and let us know what they think. It's always interesting, and once you get that sort of filmmaking bug, catches you, it's very hard not to sort of indulge in it, because it is a very fun sort of pastime to get into, and if you can successfully break that mold and get paid well for it and do it well, then think yourself lucky too, and also feel fortunate that you've gotten there. And I think a lot of the best ones do acknowledge that, because at some point or another, they did have a tough time. Even Spielberg had a tough time when he started doing his 7 years in TV hell at Universal, when even he questioned whether he still wanted to do it. So it happens to even the top ones.
Certainly does.
All right, news bites now. And speaking of filmmaking, this is an interesting one from Dark Horizons. The Veronica Mars film backers get refunds. Now,
hooray!
The interesting thing here is that it's quite exciting. Probably one of the first films ever to, apart from getting Kickstarter funding, it was simultaneously debuted in cinemas and online for consumption by everyone. And the problem, though, is that it hit a wall when a number of the crowd-funded film backers were left dissatisfied over the delivery of their digital downloads. Now, apparently, it was that bad that Warner Brothers issued refunds to the people that had put money in, anyone who'd put in $35 or more. And it had to do with certain specific ways of... there were different options for it to be downloaded. So, for example, the iTunes and Amazon downloads worked well, but there were others. The ultraviolet version, I think, was the one that they were complaining about. There just didn't work properly, and I'd probably want a refund too if I'd put some money in, and then it turns out you don't get what you promised. It's basic investing, isn't it? Well,
that's right. But there's two things here, and I mean, the first thing is this is an amazing project that has got up with this possible Kickstarter. Possible and Kickstart, both in the same sentence, with its crowdsourced funding, which has been fantastic. And they, from that, wow, they got it to distribution. Audiences have seen it. It's great. I think, though, we should be perhaps lenient, because it is a first.
Yeah.
The downloads, getting the codecs and all that, is sorted for all the different delivery systems. No one's done anything like this before, so perhaps that's why it hasn't worked perfectly all round. And, the fact they're willing still to give refunds and didn't mess around with it shows obviously that there's a lot of faith in the model. So I think it's actually quite a good story, apart from the fact it didn't go without a hitch.
Yeah, exactly. All right, our science news bite from news.com.au, and I thought you'd like this one, Steve. Scientists prove the 5-second rule is no myth. Essentially saying that, picking food off the floor that's only been there for a few seconds is still safe to eat. Now, they're saying that, not to get too cocky with that thought, because it can still carry an infection risk, but obviously the less amount of time that it's in a contaminated area, the less time the bacteria can attach itself to what you've dropped. So that's the theory, that you can still eat it. What do you think about that, Steve? I'm sure you've got an opinion on that one.
I've always thought that, to be honest, but I think that what people are missing is that it matters what you drop your food onto. So while people might not find a road particularly, appetizing if they, drop their burger onto the road or something like that, probably the fact is that on the road, as long as it's dry, there's probably not too much infection or danger there. It's just good old-fashioned dirt. Whereas if you were to drop it on something that was wet or soggy or something like that, you'd probably have a greater chance of some sort of nastiness getting across. But, it's great news. I mean, it means we can all keep eating whatever it is we drop on the ground.
Nothing's wasted.
Yeah, as long as you can see that where you dropped it was reasonably clean. I mean, you wouldn't want to drop it in some dog dirt, would you? And
no, exactly.
No amount of seconds.
There's some common sense that needs to be applied here too.
Well, yeah, I'm just worried that they haven't stated that though in their findings.
All right, and finally, our tech news bite from the Sydney Morning Herald: smartphones are new credit card technology set to revolutionise how we pay. And I think we might have covered a few things like this before, but the idea that digital wallets, near-field communication technology, even smarter smartphones coming out every year. We're going to be walking around with, our phones, and we'll, just like we're tapping credit cards now, maybe we're going to be tapping our phones on machines, or maybe it'll just be so sophisticated in the future that we'll just walk through the checkout. It'll just pick up our phone in our pocket without us having to take it out and just charge it accordingly. Who knows how it's going to turn out, but is something that I think society will have to get used to, particularly older generations who are probably not, still comfortable with using coins and cash.
Well, I think the one good thing about using coins and cash is you can actually see the money you're spending. It's an old thing, but it'd be very easy to spend a lot of money without, if all you have to do is just walk through a checkout and just takes whatever it needs. It's just very easy to overspend because you're just spending out of an account that seems bottomless until you get the bill.
I mean, credit cards are sort of like that already, and you have to be careful with because a lot of people are in trouble credit card debt-wise.
True, but you always have to pull a credit card out of your pocket, and you probably have to ignore the fact that you're overspending on a credit card to overspend on a credit card.
Yeah.
It's a simple fact. The easier they make it, the easier it is for you to spend more. Maybe that's their plan to get us out of the GFC.
Exactly. That's one way to keep people spending. But at least, I guess, for those that are sort of, in control of their spending, this would add a certain layer of convenience to things. Well, yeah. I mean, who's got time to stop and pay and wait for change? In this fast-moving world, I don't have time. I don't have time to line up. I don't have time for a cash exchange. I just need to tap and go. Exactly. All right, we might wrap it up there. So thanks again, Steve, for the chat. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, FiST Chat fans. If you are out there working in the film industry, you can always tweet us and tell us why you love it. Exactly right. All right, so just before we go, don't forget our website, fistchat.com. You can get all of our links there. We've got our ebook, The FiST Report, at fistreport.com, available on Amazon. So that's all of our collective written works for the past 2 years, before this year, of course. We've got our weekly blogs, photography on Instagram and Flickr. Don't forget to check us out now on Stitcher Radio. That's another channel that we've added, and it's an audio channel, so hopefully you'll enjoy that. And if you think anyone's interested in our weekly discussions on film science and technology, then feel free to send them to our website. We'd be much appreciative of that. So that's it for this episode, so we'll catch you next time.